111 hours by myself in a completely black room. Welcome to the Father, Sons, Brothers podcast. It's Gareth, and I'm really stoked that you've stopped by today and excited to be sharing this episode with you, because when I let my audience know that I was going to spend 5 days and 5 nights alone in a darkness retreat, a lot of people were really interested to find out more about why somebody would choose to go into what other people may call solitary confinement and lock myself in a completely dark room for 5 days and 5 nights. And so this first episode of the Father, Sons, Brothers is going to be a short pregame of a conversation that I had with Severin. Severin's the owner of a retreat space here where I live in Guatemala on Lake Atitlan. And he developed this retreat space with his now ex-partner about 10 years ago. And they built this retreat space called the Hermitage that does, amongst other things, silent retreats, but also they have 2 darkness retreats, which is a completely darkened space where seekers, people looking for healing, transformation, and challenge, choose to go in for an amount of time chosen by the participant themselves into the dark and have no access to light, conversation, telephone, any stimulation of any type for 5 days and 5 nights. That's the duration that I chose. And so this conversation that I had with Severin really has a little bit to do with what a darkness retreat is about. I speak a little bit about some of my experiences from the first time I did a dark retreat about 4 years ago before COVID, and just how powerful that experience was for me, which is why I've come back for another 5 days and 5 nights in the dark. We also speak about some of the challenges that you can go through in a dark retreat and what comes up for some people in spending this amount of time in the dark. And in many ways, it has a lot to do with 2 important components. One of them is like a fear of the dark. Like as a kid, getting locked downstairs in the basement was like a disconnection from the tribe, from safety, from light, from everything. It can become quite an overwhelming experience to that feeling of being forgotten about, especially if you have like some abandonment wound. So spending time by yourself in these spaces is a way to potentially sit with this anxiety in a safe space where you're being held to be able to go into these darker parts and to look into the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we can't see. Sometimes we've disconnected from, we put them in a place that we can't see them. A time in the dark is really an opportunity to be able to come into that and to be able to look at those parts of ourselves. The other is a reconnection with death. Some sense that there are certain parts of you that when you go and spend even 24 hours alone in the dark, completely disconnected from the light, you're going to start to see some of the stories that are shaping your experience. And when you become the observer of those thoughts and recognize them as thoughts, meaning it's not true, the stuff that I think, it's what I think sometimes, but it doesn't mean that that's true or that that's me, you go through some sort of transformation that when you come out the other side of a dark retreat, the version of you that went in, it's dead. You can't go back to being that again. You can, but you carry a lot more resentment if you choose not to step into this empowered place of recognizing where I'm telling myself some sort of perhaps victim stories or stories that I call source code that doesn't serve me anymore, meaning the source code of my decision making is my stories. All of those stories are made up. Some of them are really supportive of me. You're an amazing human being. The world is ready for your work. But some of them are like, you're not good enough. Nobody needs this work. What are people going to think? Like those are old, what I call outdated stories that come up when you don't distract yourself from your life and spend some time in something like a darkness retreat. So the second part of this, which I'm really excited about, is going to be a slightly different project. Is going to be the creation of my experience called Uncomfortable in the Dark. And it's going to be a short documentary around the experience that I went through, about the space and the tradition and medicine of darkness retreats. And that's going to be coming out in the next few weeks, maybe months. We'll see how it goes. I've never produced a documentary before, but I'm excited to do this. And we've got some amazing footage already and some really beautiful ideas to tell the story. So enjoy this podcast. This is a conversation that I had with Severin the afternoon before I went into 5 days and 5 nights in the dark. Apologies for the audio quality. We wanted to do it in his garden, and we had a Guatemalan storm blowing over. So there's some wind quality that just distorted the audio a little bit. But the conversation is super worthwhile. Really a deep dive into understanding darkness and the power of solitude and just how much healing there is in this medicine. And the next podcast episode is going to be me on the other side, and I'm going to be excited to share that journey with you. For now, enjoy my conversation with Severin and my journey into 5 days and 5 nights in the dark. Welcome to the Fathers, Sons, Brothers podcast. This is Gareth.
And my name is Severin.
We are at a place called the Hermitage, which is in San Pablo on Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. And this is a special episode of the podcast where I am going to be having a conversation with Sev, who's a dear brother that I've known for many years. He's also one of the men that I see every single week in my in-person men's circle here in Guatemala. Severin has a property here called the Hermitage, which is where we're sitting. And one of the things amongst other that they do here is darkness retreats. And I'm about to go in for 5 days for my second time. And wanted to have a conversation with Severin and share some of the magic of the medicine of going into a dark retreat. And we are also sort of against the elements here. The wind's blowing, there's a storm rolling in, so we're going to see how the audio goes. But Sev, thank you for having me again, and thanks for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, pleasure. Good to have you back.
Yeah, brother. So maybe for those people who have never heard about a dark retreat before, what is the point of going into the dark? What is it? What does it gift? Where does the medicine come from? And maybe how you got interested in holding a space for dark retreats.
All right. Big questions. So, like, what's the benefit, or like what's the medicine of a dark retreat? I would say, like, if you look at today's day and age, I think we are living in a time where we're overstimulated. Like, we have the phone in our hands, and if we don't use the phone, we're in front of the laptop. And it's just a constant overstimulation. So I think the biggest medicine of the dark retreat is actually that you really have to be with yourself. And that leads then to what is a dark retreat actually? Like for me, the simplest way to describe it is like when you have a hermetically like locked space where no source of light is coming in. And for a lot of people, it's like we have not experienced that, and we cannot even imagine what that means, because literally, like, I mean, when you did it the first time, right? Like, you go in and you think, oh, yeah, I know darkness. I've been in the wild. I've been in camping. I'm here in Guatemala. Like, we are more in nature. But you have, like, no clue, like, what real darkness is when you can actually have your eyes open or closed. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no difference. Mm-hmm. So that, for the nervous system, does like a huge shift. And that also leads me to the medicine, which is like the biggest potent like benefit that darkness gives, which is also why it's so widespread to different traditions. Like, you cannot say it comes from, it's just well known in any tradition. If you go to the Egyptian tradition, if you go to Colombian Kogimamos, like in the Amazon, if you go to the Native Americans, like a live burial. If you go to the Greek tradition, like you can even have it in France, like with the catacombs underground. Mm-hmm. And I could go on. Like, it's not something that's new. It's very ancient. Mm-hmm. And what it does is, when you are going into complete darkness, like, it really shifts you, like that you cannot externally use your eyes anymore. And that means on a brain chemistry level, like melatonin, serotonin, pre-DMT, DMT, pineal gland activation is being activated. That in itself is the medicine. So you are becoming the substance in itself. That would be a short
version of a very deep and well-revered tradition. I mean, one of the things that comes up when I speak to people about this is the worst of us go to prison, and when we've been really bad, we go into solitary confinement and close the door.
You're speaking about initiation.
Yeah, and I'm just mentioning it because a lot of people that I mentioned that I'm going in the dark for 5 days by myself as a choice, they're like, that's solitary confinement. That's the worst possible punishment you can give to a human being. And I'd love you to just speak into that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful that you have this reflection. And I mean, the people that come here, they come voluntarily to do that. I think that's the biggest part, like where you are, like we are as a society, we don't know the medicine of being alone anymore, because alone means like, oh, I'm getting bored. Like, I don't know how to be with myself. Mm-hmm. We are such in a time of age where we have to function, we have to produce, we have to declare something that defines our values. And I think initiation is actually like especially like for us, right? Like men's circle, for me, it's so important because I haven't had the role model of father I wanted, because he was just not present all the time because he's working. And so like the role model that I want is like, hey, initiate me in what for you life is and show me how to be a man, was not every day present. And I miss that. And so the lack of initiation is really speaking about that confinement, being with yourself, is actually where we as especially as a man, like we are looking for living life to the fullest and daring to go to its edge. And most of us are looking for meaning and purpose. And that doesn't come just by, this is your gift. It actually means like, can you be with yourself in the darkest place where you don't know what's coming to the surface? And I mean, if you don't do that by yourself in the dark, I mean, we can see what's happening. You go into a relationship with somebody that loves you, with a woman, then the feminine has to initiate the man, because only when you feel loved enough, your darkness can come to the surface. And that creates so much divorce, which leads in the first place to so much separation. So I think this is just like, I mean, it's a whole conversation in itself, but we're really lacking safe space that we can fully explore like what's really alive in us and be healthily initiated, ideally with elders that can give us a space and share with us what's actually happening, because nobody can do it for us.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, when there you have friends, I guess, you know, it's like, why would you do that to yourself?
Right. Hey, FSB crew, a quick message to say 97% of you who watch or consume this podcast are not subscribed. Subscribing to the show really supports us to be able to grow and reach more people, as well as include and improve the quality and caliber of guests that we have on this show. Our goal is to get this number down to 70%. And so if you have ever received any value from the content and conversations on this podcast, please consider subscribing. It really supports us and the work that we're doing. Now, back to the show. It's also so interesting because we live in a world where we've never been more connected. You know, we're connected to 1,000, 5,000 friends on Facebook. And yet loneliness is so prevalent. Like, people are uncomfortable being alone. And when you are alone, we're distracted. We're picking up the phone. We're, as you said, on the laptop. And so for me, this medicine is really just bringing myself to a place of sitting with myself, just genuinely being okay with being bored, not knowing what to do, with being lonely, because it's a cultivation of my most important relationship for me, an opportunity to just be with myself and listen to the voices that I don't often give space to be able to let those voices come up and just notice that it's just a voice and just a story, and there's nothing to be afraid of there.
And what would you say, like, you know, you've done one dark retreat, like how many years ago was it? Like 4 years? Like, what would you say, like, has been for you, like, if you would summarize, like, the essence, you know, like, you cannot say how it is for somebody that has never done it. Like, there's such a richness in it that you can take a snippet out and say it was that, and it would be like, it doesn't come close.
No.
And that's only something you understand when you have done it once. But if you would share, like, for you, what's your takeaway
from doing it the first time? Anxiety going in, you know, like some healthy nerves of like, what the fuck, this is going to be serious or something like that. And then going through all of the emotions of like being bored and, you know, being excited and enjoying the darkness and deep moments of meditation. But a defining moment for me was reflecting on my life and just realizing how grateful I was for many things in my life, to the extent that gratitude and that excitement and that sense of how fucking lucky and blessed I am was like bubbling out of me. And I started to cry in the darkness. And then I had this really important realization that I'm basically in a fucking cupboard by myself with the lights off, getting fruit salad for breakfast, and I'm as happy as I can be. And it gave me this real reflection point of like all the things that I'm working towards and chasing and worrying about and building a team to blah, blah, blah. It's amazing. And I'm just as happy in this cupboard by myself alone and being by myself. And there was some really powerful medicine for me in that. I came out of the dark retreat last time and into COVID, and I really had the sense that my time in the dark was just a strong anchor that anchored me into myself and into the world, that in spite of what was moving in the world around me, I felt pretty unshakable. And there was something about that.
That's a great reflection. Would you say like that sense that you got, because like you're really bathing in that, like there's nowhere to distract yourself too, like you cannot run away from yourself.
Yeah.
And that means, of course, like that brings up this uncomfortable emotions. And for a lot of men that I see, like I'm doing that since 10 years, like have probably like provided safe space to go to this like dark retreats for the last 10 years for about 900 people. And especially for men, there is this like, especially like American males, it's like, okay, I got my shit together, I have to be a Navy SEAL and I have to force my way through that, and if I signed up for 10 days then this is what I have to commit to.
Yep.
And it's like, it's so beautiful when you can say, actually I had anxiety. And my response then is like, wow, something would be wrong with you if you wouldn't have some nerves. If this is like a sign of respect that you don't know what you're getting into.
Right.
Because you actually don't.
Right.
And then when you're in that, and I see in a lot of people, I mean, I've done many myself, but like reflecting, like there's a general like freshness coming out of like with this, like your lens of perspective of like how you're seeing is cleansed, and therefore there's a gratitude there again to be alive again. And would you say like this essence of being aware, of just being with yourself, this is the only thing you really have? That this stability, this centeredness has really brought you through life, and you could come back to that in moments where you could remember that sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm describing as the anchor. What I think is what you're pointing to, for me, I feel like the darkness is at some level like a feminine initiation, because you generally have to fucking let go, completely let go. You can't control anything. You don't know what time of the day it is. You don't know when your next meal's coming. There was a day when I didn't even know what day I was on. And so you just genuinely have to surrender. And there's something in that process as well, which for most men who are always like trying to control and have their things together, that this initiation is a really strong place to be able to release that.
Well, what comes to me to bring in, which, like when you say surrender, like especially when we have people who are already more aware, I guess your listeners also, or like there's a surrounding where we like, oh yeah, I know surrender, I have to surrender. But we know surrender, I can surrender when it's a big moment, it's like, okay, it's an accident, or I'm going into a dark retreat, or I have a sudden situation where something changes. But what does surrender mean in the day-to-day life, where you're just having a conversation right now? How does surrender look in such a simple way? Or, when I'm brushing my teeth or I'm cooking, like, well, what is if it's not intensive, like taking a trip of ayahuasca or psilocybin? Like, it's like we can surrender fully, but what if it's actually in a very day-to-day life? And I feel that's what the dark retreat also gives you. It's like it doesn't have to be this epic, fireworks breakthrough, because it's actually this sense of centeredness or anchoredness, how you describe, of like, I'm here. I'm having myself through everything that's happening. I'm here with myself. And that's what gives me this sense of like, I have a choice, and therefore there is meaning.
Yeah.
And I'm present. And I feel that's then also helps so much more in the dark retreat to integrate what I have seen.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast. Yeah, brother, on reflecting on this, it's like, it's a death process. There's a version of me that goes in and a different version that comes out. And yeah, that identity and those ideas and those thought forms that I run continually and then distract myself before I get a chance to really penetrate them, you can't distract yourself in the dark. And so those thought forms, you realize that they're bullshit, that I'm just making up a story, or that there's some vision coming through about something, and you have to just let them go and let them die. And there's something about having the chance to really go deeply into that I realized when I come out the other side, those stories aren't true anymore.
Yeah.
And so there's a real death of identity that happens through this process. And yeah.
Are you aware of this happening again now?
I'm fucking scared, man.
You're going in again.
We had the men's circle here 2 weeks ago. And 3 weeks before that, we were here as well. And 3 weeks ago, I hadn't booked my retreat to be here. But when I came onto this property 2 weeks ago, and I already had the dark retreat in the books, there was a part of me that walked onto this property with a different level of respect that was like, this is the place where we do the thing. And there was a part of me that was, just starting to feel the butterflies of what this initiation means. And and I'm also excited. I really have been looking at it as a gift to myself, a honeymoon for 5 days to test my tools, to run my practices, to get recommitted and reconnected to myself, so that I come out and I'm a better leader, lover, member of the community, more connected to myself, more loving with myself. And that's
Did you
really
feel that the last time when you came out, it was impacting like everything that you're doing in your life in a, I mean, better is probably not the word, but how would you describe it?
You have to get to know yourself. You can't distract yourself. And there's something about that. And we had this conversation in the men's circle last Tuesday, which is like, I have the sense that my world is a reflection of the relationship, the health of the relationship with myself.
Absolutely.
And so this is really just a chance for me to get to know myself and not distract myself from myself. And the more I do that, the more I fall in love with myself. And the more I fall in love with myself, the more I give myself permission to go after my goals, to be okay with the world exactly as it is, to be less attached to whatever happens, my relationships, my ideas of what the world should look like, and just the sense of being present in my life definitely came from going through this initiation last time. And I have no idea. I have no idea.
A lot of people ask me, when they're coming, of like, how long should I go inside? And they also ask, how do I prepare? What did you find out in your process with that?
So I went in 5 days last time. I'm doing 5 days and 5 nights again this time. I don't know what the right duration of time is. All I have is my reference point from last time. My preparation has been my regular pregame of just setting some intentions, having a direction of where I want to go. But I think by the very nature of an initiation, part of it is you make plans and God laughs. Like there's some sense of like, oh, I want to go into this. And I had the same thing with my Vipassana retreats. I'm like, okay, 10 days to sit and think about. And then I said, my next business plan or my next idea or something. No. I sat down and for 10 days, I went through every intimate relationship I'd ever been in. I could not get away from sex in my opportunity where I was by myself. And I was like, wow, what is going on? This is not how I expected it to go. And so the preparation is the surrender in the preparation. There's an idea of what you want to go in for. There's a sense of that there's going to be this death of sorts. And then it's like, go in and see what the medicine brings me. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say what I think is going to happen in there because I had no idea the first time, and I don't have any sense that it'll necessarily be the same as that this time.
Yeah, that's like when I did my first dark retreat, I had such a clear like, okay, now I know. This is it now. I see now what it is. And so when I went the second time in, I had some sort of, okay, I'm a step further now. I know where I'm at.
How was your second one?
And that was very challenging for me because the second one was exactly not like the first one. So I was like, it's like the sense is like, yes, it's familiar, and still there's not like a continuation of like how this is building up on each other. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I could say now, like in all the dark retreats I have done over time, like what you get is like, you get a sense of like your awareness. And you get much faster back to a sense of centeredness and anchoredness. So it's almost like what I find it's easier to come back to is when you become aware that you, as a, like when you go in there, like you said, such a beautiful example, like you see that you're going into your sexual, like every past relationship, let's say.
Yeah.
Or you go into, let's say another topic would be, you go into how is my financial, security, how do I want to plan ahead?
Yes.
Or like, oh, I really want family, and what are some unresolved like connections and emotional like tensions that I still want to discuss, and you go through that.
Yes.
Or you feel like, okay, self-improvement, how do I want to adjust? But all these things are like, when you start to have so much time, you go through it and you see it from so many different perspectives until you come to a point like, I'm getting bored by the repetition of again and again, because actually this is not being here with myself. This is self-improvement. I'm trying to improve myself, to change something.
Right.
So you're coming to a point where you start to realize, and this is for me like the big shift.
Yes.
And I think that's really where spirituality is heading to, is like when you start to realize, what the fuck, like I'm actually not my thoughts, and I'm also not just my emotions and my feelings, because I can see them. and therefore, who the heck am I? And that means you start to watch. You feel it maybe, but the grasp it has on you, where it's like, this is me, this is my identity, which I have so many proved situations or failures or anger or
emotions that confirm that this is who I am. Yeah.
Like you're realizing, wait a second, I am bigger than this emotion. Doesn't mean it's gone and I'm beyond that. That would be like a lie. That would be like I'm pretending to be Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, and you will run into it again. But I'm not just that. Therefore, you're starting to realize, whoa, I can be in this space in between. And that space in between is where you're starting to be with yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's what grows as a capacity over every time you go in.
Well, Brew, we're about to get rained on. Let's have another conversation once I've integrated these 5 days. Thank you for being in my life, brother. Thank you for the man that you are. Thank you for the space that you hold here at the Hermitage, and for the medicine that you've shared with me and 899 other people. And I'm excited and anxious, but also I do notice that this weather is like, okay, when it's a nice day, it's more difficult to go inside. When it's raining, I'm like, cool, I can go and be a hermit. So thank you, brother. Thank you for holding this. It feels really good having you holding this space while I'm in. And such powerful medicine, and I'm really excited to see what the next 5 days bring.
Yeah, I'm just grateful to having you here. Yeah, for your willingness, to really, like, it's such a beautiful way that you are. I feel like it's really what you're holding. It's one of your gifts, like of this. I know, or that's what I feel when it's like, I know that that everything stems from the relationship with myself. Mm-hmm. And that you're prioritizing that, and that you have such a strong, clear intention. It's like, if I can polish that, like, this has a ripple effect on everything I touch. So, it's a joy to have you back.
Thank you, brother. If people want to get connected to you, what's the best way for them to connect with you, the space, and the other work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, the Hermitage is a website. Like, we are doing this work since 10 years, and people feel naturally attracted to it. So you can find Dark Retreats and the Hermitage online. And also I do more and more like online work with people where I support them in transition phases, like really transformational work, like where I'm supporting them through astrology, through psychology, and just an ongoing support. And that's actually also on the Hermitage, where I'm just sharing more and more, like what I have been doing, work here with the people, like online with people around the world. So that's where you can find me.
Beautiful. We'll put Severin's details in the show notes of this episode. Thank you for checking this out. The next time you see me, I'll be the other side of the Dark Retreat. And thanks for tuning in. Keep your eyes open for the next episode. Thank you, brother.
Keep your eyes open. You keep them closed.
Thanks very much. Till next time. Ciao.